The Annihilation of Caste by P.R. Ambedkar. I would not be surprised if some of you have grown weary listening to this tiresome tale of the sad effects which caste has produced. There is nothing new in it. I will therefore turn to the constructive side of the problem. What is your ideal society if you do not want caste? Is a question that is bound to be asked of you. If you ask me, my ideal would be a society based on liberty, equality, and fraternity, and why not? So this is true. We have been listening about this caste and the caste problem that has been existing in India since a very, very long time, and some of us may have gotten bored out of it. So here, what Ambedkar is trying to tell us is, now this is of course a writing by Arundhati Roy. It is based on the lines of work given by Ambedkar. So what objection can there be to fraternity? So they point out to this thing that just let's get over all of this caste business and this groupism. Let's talk about equality. Let's talk about liberty, fraternity. Fraternity is brotherhood. I cannot imagine any that there cannot be any objection to fraternity. An ideal society should be mobile, should be full of channels for conveying a change taking place in one part to other parts. So, an ideal society should be such that it should not be bound by anything, it should not be restricted, and if change is happening in one part of the society, it flows down to the other part as well. So the society should be very much mobile, movable, that is, the ideas flowing. The society should not be restricted or rigid. In an ideal society, there should be many interests consciously communicated and shared. There should be varied and free points of contact with other modes of association. So, the society should be such that people are very free to talk to each other, to connect with each other. Whatever changes are happening in one part of the society flows to the other part. So basically the society acts as a whole unit, a single unit. In other words, there must be social endosmosis. This is fraternity, which is only another name for democracy. Democracy is not merely a form of government, it is primarily a mode of associated living, of co-joint communicated experience. So democracy is not something that we have discussed this before in the essential writings by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, that democracy is just not a form of government, or just simply by adopting just adult suffrage and adopting a constitution and going according to it is not democracy. It's not a mere form of government, but democracy will mean when everybody is living together equally with fraternity, and the communication is co-joined, the decision making is co-joined. It is essentially an attitude of respect and reverence towards fellow men. So we need to respect them. An attitude, a feeling of mutual affection between men. Any objection to liberty? Now, first they talk about fraternity, now they're talking about liberty. That again, you will not find any objection to liberty. Liberty in the sense of a right to free movement, right to life, right to limb, all of these simple things taken by Ambedkar. There is no objection to liberty in the sense of a right to property, tools, materials being necessary for earning a living, to keep the body in a due state of health. So all of these things constitute common liberty, that we should have a liberty, we should have the right to access to different materials, access to different sources for our good health, for our living, so that we can be productive, we can produce new things, and we can earn our living, earn our keep. Why not allow a person the liberty to benefit from an effective and competent use of a person's power? The supporters of caste who would allow liberty in the sense of a right to life, limb, and property would not readily consent to liberty in this sense is as much as it involves liberty to choose one's profession. All of these come under liberty: the liberty to choose things, liberty to do things according to one's own choice. But to object to this kind of liberty is to perpetuate slavery. Now, when a person objects to this kind of slavery, that this kind of liberty, when they object that this liberty has is not good, or it has to be objected, that is when it results into slavery. For slavery does not merely mean a legalized form of subjection, it means a state of society in which some men are forced to accept from others the purpose which control their conduct. This condition obtains even where there is no slavery in the legal sense. So, legally, or so as to speak, on paper, there is no slavery. But slavery in actuality, in practice, will mean that there are some people who have to do and work according to what the others are saying. So they are forced to accept from others the purpose which control their conduct, how they have to behave, what are the things they are allowed to do. So legally and to speak on paper, there is no slavery existing. But when some people have to follow the rules and orders of others, or live their life according to other people's let's say conditions, that is when it is slavery. Any objection to equality, this condition obtains even when there is no slavery in the legal sense. It is found whereas in the caste system, some persons are compelled to carry on certain prescribed callings which are not of their choice. Any objection to equality? This has obviously been the most contentious part of the slogan of French Revolution. The objects to equality must be sound. May be sound, and one have to admit that all men are not equal. But what of that? Equality may be a fiction, but nonetheless one must accept this as the governing principle. Now, what they're trying to tell us is that it's true, all men cannot be equal. There are bound to be some differences, but it is us who have to decide what is the basis of those differences. Like a man's power is dependent upon three things: physical heredity, social inheritance or endowment in the form of parental care, education, accumulation of scientific knowledge, everything which enables him to be more efficient than the savage, and finally, on his own efforts. In all of them, men are unequal. Physically, they inherit different characteristics, different looks and appearances, health, height, weight. Their social inheritance is different, the wealth that they inherit, the knowledge, the opportunities to have a good education, good food, good healthcare system, everything, good access to resources. That is, the inheritance is different. Every person has different kind of inheritance and approach towards different resources. And then there's a differences based on their own efforts, how much a person is doing efforts for something. In all these three respects, men are undoubtedly unequal. That is true that in all three ways, men are equal. Some people put in more efforts, other less effort. Some have inherited more money, some less. And not only but money, some have had the opportunity to have good education from the very start of their life. Some did not have. But the question is, shall we treat them as unequal because they're unequal? No. Now, for equality, out of all these three things, our inequality should be based on the third point. From the standpoint of the individualist, it may be just to treat men unequally so far as their efforts are unequal. So, we may treat men unequally. That is true. Men will always be unequal in so many aspects. But the right way to treat that inequality should be based on the efforts made. So there always be differences among men, and what we have to choose is what are the differences that we'll choose upon which we'll treat them unequally. So it may be just if we treat men unequally based on their own efforts. It is desirable to give as much incentive as possible to the full development of everyone's power, but what would happen if men are treated as unequally as they're unequal in the first two respects? So in case of social inheritance or physical heredity, it is something that they have not done for themselves, and treating them unequal on the first two bases will be true an inequality. It is obvious that those individuals also in whose favor there is birth, education, family name, business connections, and inherited wealth would be selected in the race. So in such a case, persons who have more wealth, who have a business name, who have some big family connections, all of these things, have had a good education, all of these things, and those men will be selected. And it's not their fault that they have got that, and it's not another person's fault that they were not born into a wealthy family or an educated background. So, selection under such circumstances would not be a selection of the able, but just the selection of somebody who's gotten lucky. It would be the selection of the privileged, who's got privileged. The reason, therefore, which first is that in the third respect we should treat men unequally demands, and in first respect we should treat men as equally as possible. On the other hand, it can be urged that if it is good for the social body to get the most out of its members, it can get the most out of them only by making them equal as far as possible at the very start of the race. That is one reason why we cannot escape equality. So, what will be a good social setting is that from the very start, we try to maintain that equality. We try to give everybody the equal opportunities, equal access to resources, to healthcare, education, everything, so that the inequality gaps reduces. That is one reason that we cannot escape equality, is because We start with this unequal thing from the very start of the race, from the very beginning, where people not there are some people who have the best of facilities, and there are some who don't have even the basic amenities. It is good for the social body to get the most of its members, and it can get most out of them only by making them equal. So that the one reason for equality is to get a very good social setting for development. For that, another reason why we must accept equality is a statesman is concerned with the vast numbers of people. He has neither the time nor the knowledge to draw finest distinctions and to treat each one equitably. That is, according to need or according to capacity. However, desirable or reasonable and equitable treatment of men may be. Humanity is not capable of assortment and classification. The statesman therefore must follow some rough and ready rule and that rough and ready is to treat all men alike, not because they're alike, but because classification and assortment is impossible. So another reason why we should accept equality is because it is very difficult to classify people according to so many different categories, and that is why if we just treat them equally, it will be much lesser work for us. We don't have to classify and categorize people, how to treat them differently according to their own background. The doctrine of equality is glaringly fallacious, but taking all in all, it is the only way a statesman can proceed in politics, which is a severely practical affair and which demands a severely practical test. So we just, by treating them unequally, we just increasing our own burden because we have to categorize and classify people into so many different categories. So that is why these are the two reasons why equality must be accepted according to Ambedkar and Arundhati Roy.